At Church of the Savior, our practice for many years is what we call free pulpit and free pews. And what that means is that when I get up here to speak each Sunday, I'm offering the insights that have struck me about the Scriptures or about what's going on in the world at this time, without the assumption that every single one of you will agree with me. I know that's shocking, but because we are a community of interpretation together, and it is in our gathering and in our teaching and in our conversation that we seek to discern what God is saying in our time. And so I offer this sermon today kind of as a personal reflection, almost a personal struggle that I've had in my life. I offer it to you for your reflection and thought as well. Memorial Day is a day of memory, a day to look back and remember those who gave their lives in military service to our nation. At this point in my life, it's also a day of some ambiguity for me. On one hand, I have deep respect for the men and women who sacrificed their lives and who right now are still sacrificing their lives in service to our country. And some of us may have such people in our families and among our friends. I think it's appropriate, even important, to remember them. If we don't remember them, if we forget about them in their graves from Gettysburg to France, from Vietnam to Arlington, and still dying in places like Iraq and Afghanistan this very day, perhaps, if we forget about them, then all of our holiday blowout sales and family cookouts become hollow symbols of just how shallow our national soul has become. On the other hand, over the years, I have grown increasingly uncomfortable with our country's endless willingness to threaten violence and use military might to protect what we perceive to be our quote-unquote national interests, sometimes putting our own women and men in harm's way for questionable reasons. And I've grown increasingly uncomfortable with the degree to which we as a nation trust in might, in the power of guns and bombs, rather than in God, no matter what it says on our money. And actually, although it says in God we trust on a lot of our coins and so on, I guess it doesn't really define in which God we trust, right? But based on the amount of money we spend on our military budget and on weapons, rather than on programs of social uplift, as Martin Luther King said, I think it's pretty clear where we place our trust. You have to understand now, I grew up in the shadow of World War II, the so-called good war, in which we were fighting against the tyranny of fascism. I grew up with a grandfather who received a Purple Heart and Silver Star back in World War I for his bravery on the front lines as an engineer in the Army. He was hard of hearing and walked with a limp for the rest of his life. He was full of shrapnel until the day he died. And Grandpa Gill raised the American flag in his yard every day. And whenever we were there, he taught me to stand and salute it as he raised it. And I loved him and admired him, and I wanted to be like him. My father served in the Navy in the North Atlantic in World War II. My Uncle Fred, who was a Marine, somehow survived 4 or 5 island campaigns in the Pacific, including Iwo Jima and Guadalcanal. So as a kid, I loved reading military history and wanted to go to West Point. That was my dream for quite a while, to be in the military. Then came Vietnam, where tens of thousands of brave young men died serving their country in a war that probably never should have been. And I started to read books about the violent reality of war and its impact on both innocent civilians and those who fought. I also gained new insights from the people around me at that time. It turned out that my patriot grandfather had refused to sign off so my father could enlist at age 17 to fight in World War II. There was something about his experience of war that made him want to keep his son from experiencing it. My Methodist pastor at the time, Reverend Jackson Gill, had gone to Sunday worship with a friend on the front lines in World War II to a German Lutheran church in a nearby village. He didn't know where his friend was taking him until they got there, and his friend took him to a German Lutheran church in a nearby village where they were serving. The experience of worshiping with those who were considered our enemies so moved him that he immediately asked to be transferred to service as a medic and decided to go into the ministry. Toward the end of the Vietnam War, even my God and country father said that he wouldn't want me to serve in that war.